Hi guys, and welcome to this tutorial. This is unusually for me, but lots of you have been asking for it. So this is a response to an inspector calls. What I'm going to do is talk you through a full mark answer I've done to a question about Gerald. So how does Priestley present Gerald's relationships with women? This was a question that was in some of the sample materials provided by AQA. But I think it works quite nicely if you could sort of adapt this if you got, say, the 2020 question, which was about men behaving irresponsibly, basically, and you could pick a character or a number of characters. I think Gerald's an interesting character, sometimes overlooked, but I think that, doing some revision around him could be useful for a number of different kind of questions. Anyway, I have already kind of produced my plan here. This is what I always do, whether this is the Shakespeare or whether this is a modern drama text. I always, or even in actual fact, if I'm looking at, say, a prose text like A Christmas Carol, I tend to focus on doing some planning around the beginning and the middle and end of the text. It just helps me be coherent. So you can see my plan here. I was thinking about Gerald, and I was thinking, right at the start, well, he was clearly very persistent and dedicated to Sheila. He sort of makes the point that he'd been waiting long enough, or he'd kept asking her. But we do already have those quite ambiguous references to last summer. We don't quite know what's gone on there, but certainly he now feels fortunate, hopes he can make her happy. We get the reference to, obviously, the engagement ring. And just in terms of, that's quite Sheila focused, but in terms of, obviously, those first references to Eva, he does support Mr. Burling's attitude in that she had to go, when she was asking for more money. So he does represent that kind of careless, lack of empathy towards the working class, or girls of that class, such as Eva or Daisy, as he would know her. I think the middle section is obviously where we get lots of our interesting things around Gerald. So I think about his reference to towards the end of Act 1 here, where he talks about the girl Daisy. It was all over and done with. He's very kind of, he tries to be quite detached around this. He's not really taking ownership of that behaviour. We see in terms of his desire to protect Sheila, or is it himself? She's had a long, exciting day, and this is going to be very unpleasant and disturbing. He doesn't want her privy to the full revelation of what he's done. We get some sense of, he viewed her in terms of physicality. He noticed she was pretty, and then we again see this sort of protective, sort of sense of Gerald, that he kind of intervenes when she's been harassed by men in the bar, but through that self-revealing irony, he sort of even states all she wanted was to talk, and that she was quite shaken. And then he sort of has some quite sort of powerful language around his behaviour. I insisted this. She was intensely grateful. And then I always love Sheila's sort of sarcastic response about, oh yeah, you must have been the wonderful fairy prince. This idea of this fantastical role that he seemed to take. And then towards the end, he in degrees takes responsibility. I did keep, but again, this anonymous language of a girl. He's then trying to abnegate responsibility through the did we do this, and then this sort of deluded sense that everything's all right, and that sense of he holds up the ring. He just wants to return things in the way that they were before. So I'm going to talk you through my response now. And sort of point out how and why this would be a grade 9. Okay, I'm just going to change my visualizer slightly so I can fit that on properly. Just bear with me. Okie doke. Right, so I start all literature essays, or I would advise all students, whatever element of literature it is, to start with a thesis statement. This is a statement which sort of sums up, summarises your perspective and your point of view. So I've gone with Gerald's relationships with women are flawed, marred, and to an extent toxic. I like a list of 3 at the start. Just find 3 kind of good words to sum up that character or that theme, whatever your topic's going to be. So I quite like putting that embedded clause in to an extent, because it gives you wriggle room. It gives you room, if your essay takes a particular direction, to kind of pull it back with a slightly different line of argument. And then I'm focusing on characterization here, the idea of a character being used for a purpose. So through Gerald, Priestley explores Gerald's patriarchal, dismissive attitude towards women and leaves audiences appalled by his remorseless and uncompassionate response to Eva's suicide. So I've got that sense of him having a function and a wider purpose. So then this is when I'm going to then just go through my text chronologically with a character. I think to me it's the easiest way of doing it. It helps you, it allows you to show the development of that character. So as you can see here, I'm looking in the opening scenes. Within those opening scenes, Priestley depicts Gerald as the epitome of polite, respectable society. He is a polite and highly appropriate future son-in-law. He presents Sheila with the engagement ring and hopes he can make her happy. His dialogue is effective in conveying his dedication and commitment to his future wife. However, this romantic ideal is immediately challenged through the reference to last summer. There's ambiguity here, but Sheila clearly harbours resentment towards his distance. Perhaps she's already suspicious and lacks trust, despite his claims that he is fortunate to have Sheila. So I'm into weaving a number of things here. I'm thinking, structural things, so the opening scenes. So we've got, just thinking where we're thinking about elements of stagecraft, so opening scenes here. So the reference, there's ambiguity here. So I'm just sort of pointing out and identifying a couple of structural elements here, and just thinking about our introduction to that character. Okay. So here, Priestley, oops, bear with me, sorry. Here, Priestley is effectively foreshadowing the unsettling, dreadful revelation of Gerald's affair with Daisy. As such, his willingness to not only cheat, but to also maintain a lie is clearly a very poor foundation for his future marriage, and indicates an arrogant entitlement. To Gerald, women are mere commodities. There are women he views as wife potential and women who fulfill his exploitative and egotistical desire to be adored. So I'm focusing very much on Priestley doing stuff, and here that device of foreshadowing the later revelation when we find out about him. But I'm also trying to demonstrate to an examiner evaluation my own take on it, my own perspective. And anytime I'm using arrogant, exploitative, egotistical. These are great words to use to describe Gerald. His affair is revealed in the climactic end or final moments of Act 1, leaving audiences absorbed with the tense fallout of such scandalous behaviour. So again, really focusing on the sense of stagecraft and the performance. Within Act 2, Priestley focuses the audience's attention onto Gerald's confession, building an image of a man who was careless and neglectful of women, especially those who were vulnerable or reliant on him. His repeated reference to the girl speak of his detachment. He rarely uses Daisy's name, showing the distance he has placed between himself and his former lover. Priestley manipulates the dialogue to demonstrate Gerald's blind exploitation. The verb insisted, in relation to his guidance and protection of Daisy, serves to reiterate his forceful and arrogant persona. He admits that she was intensely grateful, and through this self-revealing irony, audiences are left repulsed by the way he used Daisy to feed his monstrous ego. So lots and lots of evaluation here. I'm focusing on methods because I'm focusing on things like the dialogue, specific words, the verbs, and really thinking about our responses as audiences. Sheila's acerbic, meaning like biting, metaphor, wonderful fairy prince, accurately sums up Gerald's deluded, fantastical belief in himself. He acknowledges he was the most important person to her, but still cuttingly and cruelly discarded her. As an avowed capitalist, her life and clear adoration of him were mere commodities. So I'm getting some context in there, just interwoven. Indeed, Gerald seems to typify the conscienceless, indifferent attitudes of a capitalist society which treated girls like Daisy as inferior human beings. Within the play, and in many ways, Gerald's contemptuous disregard of Daisy's... bear with me. Clearly, Priestley's political ire is thinly veiled within the play, and in many ways, Gerald's contemptuous disregard of Daisy's fate really exemplifies everything Priestley despised within society. So again, that context interwoven with a reference to the text. By the end of Act 3, see how I'm going through this chronologically, just taking Gerald's characterisation all the way through. Gerald's confessional tone has been replaced with cold, hard self-preservation. He seeks to abnegate responsibility, and instead of reflecting on his actions, he merely tries to paper over the marred his actions. Tries to paper over the marred and desperate remnants of his relationship with Sheila. Priestley's stage directions are cyclical. Gerald presents the ring again, seemingly unaware of the damage and distress he has caused. Indeed, in this very gesture, he demonstrates a total lack of empathy or understanding towards women. To him, girls are mere objects to be bought and kept. It is with delight that we see Sheila's rebuffal of his arrogant assumption that everything's all right now. Overall, Gerald exemplifies the most revolting attitudes towards women. Despite his claims, he is largely unaffected by Daisy's death and naively believes he can continue in his pretense of respectability by marrying Sheila, a woman now disgusted with him. So what I've done here, I say only, but it's 3 sides long, and actually what I've tried to do is just track his character. You'll see I've just interweaved the odd quote. I mean, realistically, I've probably only got something like 5-6 quotes in this about him, and some of those are single words like girls. The real skill here is about having a perspective, having a point of view about that character, focusing on the ways in which the writer has used him and deployed him for a wider purpose. So I just wanted to show you, as I said, I don't do Inspector Calls very often, which is why I've not done much in the way, but I know lots of you have asked for a tutorial or a little help on this. So that's my full mark grade 9 response to a Gerald question. Hope it was useful.